Okay, hi everybody. I'm here today talking with Stuart Nicolle, who today is the Chief Information Officer for TRG Arts, which is a arts consulting company based in Colorado, but also operates around the world and in the UK, which is where Stuart is. So Stu and I have known each other for a very long time, and so I want to start at the beginning. You've been involved in arts and technology for a very long time, so I wonder, let's go back to the roots. Like, how did you manifest your interest in the intersection of arts and technology?
Oh man, so I guess in my first job, a marketing director said two things to me that have stuck with me since, this was like early thousands, right? No,
Yeah,
late 90s. One of
yeah.
those things was highly strategic. The other was deeply, deeply tactical. And at first they seemed completely at odds to me. And what I didn't realize is that would drive pretty much everything that I do since then. So he
Yeah.
told me that he has currently one marketing strategy that he was working to, but he wanted 100,000 marketing strategies, one for each of his patrons. And then he said that his biggest frustration was, I know that half of my brochure mailing is wasted, I just don't know which half. And so my mind was a bit blown because I was like, how can you have this future vision of hyper personalization and not know right now which half of your brochure is working or not? And I think that changed things for me. I'd literally just finished my master's in arts administration. I'd majored in statistics and quantitative research. And that's when I thought I can make a difference. But also, I suppose I come with this background of being a classically trained, although not very good, double bassist. And so I have this first-hand experience of knowing the impact that live performing arts can have on individuals and audiences. And so this has become, I think, my obsession, I suppose, over the last kind of 25 years, which is how do we use data and technology to ensure that the live performing arts can thrive and more than survive, it thrives.
So out of that spark, out of that inspiration, you started a company. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your company? It's called Purple 7.
Yeah.
How did you get it going, and what was your first product, and how did that go?
So before we started Purple 7, I was a market analyst for this regional audience development agency in the UK, and there's one of many of them in the UK. And this was at the time, don't forget that ticketing systems were new on the block, right? And I could see all this data just sitting in these ticketing systems that was being unused, latent data. So we came up with this method, which makes me laugh actually thinking about it now, which was we wrote this software program called Data Crunch. But in order to power this software program, we had to ask the venue to extract data from their ticketing system, burn it onto CD, post it to us. We would load that data onto our computers, load it into a Microsoft Access database. That powered this software, which would burn both of those things back onto a new CD and post that back to the venue, who would then load that onto their computer and would be able to get insights from their ticketing data. So, that was insane, right? It was actually, looking back, it had about 8 or 9 key insights on it, and they're not bad insights. I was still doesn't work anymore, but it's a great product. The other thing that I was in charge of back then was surveys, and this is relevant, I promise you. So I was primarily responsible for doing the RSC's, Royal Shakespeare Company's quarterly surveys. And back then, again, we had to print off the surveys, stuff envelopes, put in paid return envelopes, send it out, wait a couple of weeks. And everybody wanted to tell us what they thought of the Royal Shakespeare Company. So we ended up with masses of survey responses. We had to get a team of data inputters to load it up and to digitize it so that we could analyze it. But then we wrote a report to the RSC. And this all seemed super time intensive. I think I'm a good developer in that I'm lazy. So wherever I can find some shortcuts, I would. So the challenge, I suppose, was that the company I was working for was publicly funded. So if we wanted to make changes to the software, we had to apply for a grant. And then we had to, in order to pay for the software developer to make the changes, and then we had to give the software away for free. It wasn't an environment for kind of building a good software solution. So we left, the software developer, and my wife, we left and we set up Purple 7. And the challenge, the goal, if you like, was to just automate all of that insights and provide some action on the back of it. So our first tool we built, and it was for venues, and it suction data from their ticketing system in real time onto our web servers, which back then was a big thing, right? Web didn't happen in 2002. And then they had semi-live, automated insights that they could look at, and they could see, they could build mailing lists and segment their data as they wanted to. The ironic thing was that wasn't the first product that we sold. That's the first product we built. The first product we sold was another marketing agency. Remember the one that I worked for? It was a different one. It was one based up in Manchester. They wanted this tool for all of their venues across Manchester, but they wanted the results and the agency to provide this aggregated view of the world. So we had to pivot really quickly, build this kind of we had to integrate with all the different ticketing systems, change the product, and we released that. And that was really the start of Purple 7, was this aggregated benchmarking analysis for regional organizations.
And how long tell me the arc of that business. How long did you work in it, and what were some of your successes and some of your challenges?
I think I've probably got more failures than successes, Gene.
Yeah.
So I think I had three successes over the years, and I one of them was to solve this problem of which half of the brochure mailing was wasted. And so I built this thing called Balanced Database, which was a segmentation system. And the idea was that it would predict who is most likely to make the next purchase. And it worked, right? It worked really well. And I was able to categorically, through data, prove that you could cut your mailing in half without it impacting your revenues. So that was huge. It's a short-lived success. I'll talk about that in a minute, but it was an achievement. And the next thing we built was a thing called a recommendations engine, which was using behavioral data, and it was able to tell you what you were going to attend. So now I can see who is most likely to attend and what it is that they're most likely to come to. Both of those failed spectacularly, I think, because I hadn't really considered the business environment within which brochures were being sent out. I kind of sat in my ivory tower and solved this problem, but actually it wasn't a problem that anybody wanted to solve in the real world, because the touring companies that were coming to the venues paid to go into the brochure. I hadn't really understood that. And so therefore their measure of success was the total number of brochures that got sent out. And so me coming along saying, no, half that, they're like, no. But that didn't work. And then the recommendations engine worked really well. We actually had it plugged in to the Barbican's homepage. So if you went along to the Barbican and you were a customer, it would curate the homepage to show the shows that it thought was going to be right for you. And it was successful. We could see an uptick in purchases, and they kept it on for years. The problem was it took 8 hours a day to process the data just for one venue. So we couldn't scale it. So I think out of all of this, what we learned was that these are action tools that people need to take action on the basis of insights. Most of the time, at that time, people were looking in the rear view mirror, seeing what had happened to their organization. And our job was pushing constantly to see what they could do in the future. The one thing that really worked for us was our surveys tool, where we sent out, or the venue could send out, automated post-show surveys, where the results of the survey was connected to your ticketing history. So you didn't have to ask in the survey, how much did you pay for your ticket? Where did you sit? All of that kind of stuff. We knew all of that. And which means that you can then start to see the difference between how attractive the venue is to first timers versus, your regular customers, what people thought of your pricing versus how much they actually paid. So you can start looking at all of that price sensitivity. And that turned out to be a rip-roaring success, actually. That was really good.
Well, I want to jump in a way from then, 20 years hence, to now, and tell me if you agree with me, but organizations are still grappling with these same kinds of problems.
Right.
Many of them are still using systems that were created in the 2000s or earlier. They're still grappling to understand who their customers are and who to mail to. I mean, do you feel that is still the state of the industry? And if so, what are you working on today that's likely to change that after all these years?
Yeah, it's actually slightly depressing, Gene. So I remember going out with 2 consultants. I don't know, this was mid-noughties, so I don't know, like 2007. And they were long in the tooth in the consulting world in cultural sector. And they even then said over the last 10 years, nothing has changed, and they were a little bit disheartened by it. I think things have changed. I think they have. We are certainly on the brink of making bigger change because, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, the kind of leveling of the playing field, to steal some of your words from email days, but to leveling the playing field through the use of AI, meaning that organizations have access to technologies that were really the domain of the big boys with deep pockets. And I think that that's going to be quite exciting going forward. What we're doing at the moment in TRG is we're taking all of the product that we've built up in the library of stuff in Purple 7 that's been really only available in the UK, and we are taking all of our learned experience from both TRG and Purple 7 in order to make it drive value to organizations in North America. So those things, it follows this kind of plan, do, review cycle, which is what everybody needs to do. They need to plan their shows, they need to take action to make those shows successful, and then they need to review and learn from all of that. So all of our tools, there's insights in there, sort of holistic organizational level insights, right down to what's happening in an individual event. You've got trackers which intelligently and use machine learning and AI to create trajectories, sales trajectories for your shows, for your single tickets, for your donations, for your subscribers, and then track how you're performing against those. But then if you're underperforming, where are you underperforming? Is it in your single tickets that you need to send a mail out to your database, or do you need acquisition? And then, of course, we've got surveys plugged in, which I think is going to be super important, because one of the key things that I've realized over the years is that people's motivations to attend is significant information for the marketer. If you think about my own attendance on a classically trainable basis, right? So I like going to classical music concerts. I'll go to those probably on my own because no one else wants to come with me. And if I go with my wife, then we're going to go to a theatre play because that's what she likes to go to. And if we go with the kids, I'm going to go to something else. And so if you look at my personal transactional history, my motivations to go to those three different types of product are very different. So understanding motivations and being able to curate recommendations based on your motivation is super important. So that's all coming out in...
Yeah, fascinating. I want to ask you're an entrepreneur who's been building technology to help arts organizations run themselves better. And I wonder if you want to talk about sort of how easy is that to start that kind of company, and what advice do you have for folks that are in their 20s now and thinking about and are passionate about the arts, about how to start a business and how it will impact the field?
Wow. I mean, the challenge, I think, in the arts tech world is twofold. Cultural organizations don't have deep pockets. And so every investment in technology must either reduce costs or increase revenues for the venue. Ideally, it would do both, right? But venues are stretched really thin, so they don't have the resources to take on these kind of new technical products unless it's not additive to their workload. So any solution, I suppose, needs to create capacity within the existing teams, not consume it. So the other thing I think is interesting here is that philanthropy plays a huge role. There's a point to all of this, I promise. Philanthropy plays a huge role in the cultural sector. So in 2019 alone, $6 billion was donated to cultural organizations in the US. But most of that money goes to closing the operating deficits that the organization has, and not investing in the technology that could make those organizations self-sustaining. And that's where I see the opportunity. I think if cultural organizations don't leverage technology to personalize and modernize their engagement with audiences, they're not just going to struggle. Actually, we're going to see some of them collapse. And when that happens, we're going to lose something far greater than just ticket sales. We're actually going to lose what is making our cities and our communities vibrant, right? I've got this belief back to my double bass days of the power of arts that makes us human.
Well, you've more or less identified exactly what I am also passionate about, which is that cultural organizations struggle to make ends meet. Technology, particularly the AI evolution, which has shown in its early days every evidence of being able to do things faster and quicker, not take our jobs, but make our jobs easier.
Absolutely.
And so if there's sort of a quick exit ramp for cultural organizations to say, how can I do better quickly? it's through technology. And that's
It's
not it. That's a conversation that people are used to hearing. And it's not necessarily something that is self-evident. And part of this discussion and others that I'm having is to try to spread that word, that technology itself could
yeah.
actually save our industry. Well, yeah, please.
I totally agree with that. I think that the key thing that I'd share here is that venues operate like independent organizations, right? And so this would be my advice to the 20-year-olds, which is
Yeah,
if they can build something that helps groups of organizations run on the same platform where they can share the same technology, where they can spread the cost of the maintenance of that technology and all of that kind of stuff, I feel that that's where we're going to see the greatest impact, because otherwise every organization becomes a kind of unique snowflake in the way that they are creating engaging with that technology. And actually a consortium of organizations, we're seeing it beginning with ticketing. You see these
yeah.
consortium of venues with ticketing. How could that work with any other sort of technology across that might help a venue? That's where I see the opportunity lying.
Well, this has been really a great conversation. There's more that we can have. You're still in the thick of it, trying to solve these problems. So I'll be delighted to see the new projects and the new product as it rolls out in the United States. And let's check in again and see how things turn out there, and see what else you cook up in the next couple of months.
It's been a delight. Thank you, Gene.
Yeah, thank you very much.